So I am out here today working on some of my irrigation, and I thought this would be a good time to do a video on how I actually installed this. I did some of these, I did like 8 or 9 years ago, but I am working on some new ones, and I thought I'd bring you guys along and show you exactly how I did them. Okay, so we start here at the source. This is coming out of my garage. Now this is tapped into my main water system coming from my well. I bypassed my water softener because I don't need it softened going to the garden. So this is directly from the line coming in from the well. And so I've got PVC coming out of the garage down into this timer. Now from the timer out, I've got, now don't pay attention to that water on there, I've been messing with it. I convert from PVC to this 3/4 inch irrigation pipe. And then this goes down, it's buried just a few inches under the ground. It goes over to my garden. It makes a few turns until it gets to the garden. So let's go over to the garden. I'll show you where it comes out. Okay, so we have the pipe coming from the garage. It's about 30 feet away. So this 3/4 inch pipe comes in, and I've got it on a T, and you can't see it because it's been here for like 8 years. And so, but it's a T here, and let me show you the T. It's right here, one of these. So you just put a T in, and your pipe just connects to it, and I'll show you the different connectors. But yeah, and it just keeps on going to another bed. Now, I know this may look strange. So I went up here with this poly pipe. I converted it back to PVC. The reason why I did that is because I have 11 of these beds, and so these ball valves are only just a few bucks. Now they do make an inline poly ball valve, which looks like this. So you don't have to do any of this conversion. You just, this goes right into the pipe, and you put your ball valve in, and you just keep going. Now the reason why I didn't do that is because these are like 12 or 13 bucks. So that's over almost 200 bucks or whatever. So or 150. So I went to these, much cheaper. Now the disadvantage to these, the PVC will break down over time because of the UV. So the sun will break this down. But this has been here for, well, I put it in 2016. So this is 8 years old, and it still hasn't broke. I do blow it out, make sure it doesn't crack because of the freezing, but it's been fine so far. So if you're worried about that, you can go with one of these. It's much easier than converting it. Okay, so after I put my valve on, by the way, I have a valve on every one of my beds. The reason being is because I can't have them all run straight because I don't have enough water pressure. Even with this 3/4 inch pipe, there's just not enough. So I turn on a couple of the beds, water them for a little bit, turn them off, and then turn on a couple more. And that's how I do it incrementally. So I come up here, and then up here what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put in a T. Now this I know looks a little differently because way back when I got this, I had to get one with a thread on it, and then I had to go from a thread to the poly pipe, which was just a big mess, but because they didn't have the T's. But what you'll do is you come up here and you put in a T. So your pipe will go onto the T, you'll clamp it down. I'll show these clips in a little bit. So you'll clamp it down, you'll bring your pipe over here, and then this goes to each side of the bed. So on each side of the bed, both sides, I put in right here an elbow, and then I clamp it down, and then I continue on. So these beds are 16 feet long. And on each side, I've come down about 3 feet and a couple inches and put a sprayer. So I've got 4 sprayers on each side, and that's a total of 8 sprayers per bed, and that covers the whole bed. Now every 3 feet, let me show you what I've got here. I put in one of these. This is a T. Let me see if I can get it into the camera here. This is a T with a thread, a 1/2 inch thread. And in each thread, you put what's called a riser. Now you can get these in different lengths. I got the shortest one you could. So I screw this in like this, and then my sprayer goes on top of it. Now there's a few different types of sprayers you can buy. I prefer these. These are what's called a Shrub sprayer. You can also get them that look like this, and there's also some that pop up. Now when I went and got a few more, I've been doing some more beds, And they didn't have these. I had to order them online. So temporarily, I got a couple of them that pop up. I don't like them as well. These are my favorites. These are only like $1.79. These are a few bucks. And the ones that are, they have some brass ones that are pop up, they're like $5 or so. These are the cheapest, and I think that they do the best spray. So I'll put a link below to where I got these. Now there's different patterns. So the pattern is basically the spray. If it sprays straight across and forward, that's a 180-degree pattern, so it's called a half pattern. They have a quarter pattern which sprays at 90 degrees, so it's only a 90-degree spray. Then they have a 360 pattern, which is called a full pattern, and that sprays everywhere. So there are some people that like to run these down the center of their bed and then spray 360, but I don't like to do that, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So I put one of these in, and then I continue on. So I've got one down here. This goes into the head, or the riser, like that, and I adjust it so that the spray is going this way. Well, I should also mention on all of these, there's a little screw on the top, and you could adjust the amount of spray that comes out. So if it's spraying too far out, you can turn the screw down and it'll bring the spray back in a little bit. It won't adjust the angle of the spray, it'll just the amount of water that comes out. Okay, so when I get to the end, I put in just an elbow. It terminates here as an elbow. And what that is that's just one of these where the hose connects on, you clamp it down, and then you're fitting, in other words, it's not a T, it doesn't continue on. It just comes up here with a thread, 1/2 inch, this one's 3/4, but it's a 1/2 inch thread, and then you screw your riser in, and then the spray head on top of it. So let me show you how to connect all your piping. Okay, so now I hope this is going to focus. I'm trying to get close. To cut this poly pipe, I use here what's called, this is Milwaukee poly pipe cutter. I don't use the ones that are for PVC because a lot of times you'll try to cut it and it'll just kind of crush the pipe. It'll squeeze it, it won't cut. So this one's made specifically for this poly pipe. So I'll put a link below to where you can get these. So what you do is it's really simple. You just put your pipe in there and it just cuts real easily. Lost my clamp. And it just cuts like a breeze. Now to connect these, what you do is, now there's different places that I bought the pipe. Now they're all 3/4 interior dimensions, but some of them have a thicker wall. So the pipe is just a little bit bigger. They're still the same interior, but it's thicker, it's harder, stiffer pipe. Now some of this pipe, so in other words, what's going to happen is if you have the thinner wall pipe, you can actually push these on and it will push on with a little bit of force. But I've had some where the wall is so thick that I couldn't push it on with all my might. So what you have to do then is you have to heat the pipe up with a hairdryer. And then once you heat it up and get it nice and soft, then it'll push right on, no problem. And it doesn't take too long, just 15, 20 seconds. And now there's little stops right here on these. And so I push it all the way up till I hit the stop, just like that. And then I clamp it down. Now there's 2 ways to clamp these down. There's what's the pipe clamp here. I think everybody has seen these, where they're just, you just use a screwdriver or a nut wrench or whatever, ratchet, and then clamp them down and you're good to go. It's no problem. But I don't like this method, and I'll tell you why. Once you clamp these down, they're really tight. And you want them to be tight because you don't want them to leak. But there's barbs on here. See, there's barbs on here like that. And so you don't have to really reef on them to get them to clamp down and not water or not leak. So I don't use these as much. I have some, but I prefer these little pinch clamps. And what they do is they go on like this, and then you have a tool right here. So this tool goes onto the top of that, and then you take it and then you squeeze down and it tightens around the pipe and it clamps. Now the reason why I like these better is because when you clamp these down, they don't move, right? There's no movement. And I suppose you could let them off a little bit and turn it. But with these, the nice thing about with the pinch clamps is that when they go on, believe it or not, you can still actually turn this back and forth if you need to adjust the angle or something if it's not quite right. With these, for some reason, when you clamp them down, they're so tight that the pipe doesn't want to move. Now I know what you're saying. Don't clamp them down so tight, right? But I haven't found a sweet spot. where, you know, I can loosen it off a little bit, but then I get a little leakage. So you clamp them down. These are really tight, the hose clamps, but I just prefer these. As far as cost goes, I think these pinch clamps are also cheaper. So that's another reason why I like them. So when I clamp them down, I go all the way into the stop right here. And then I put my clamp on right about where it would hit right here in the center of this. You know, anywhere in this area here would be fine, but you'll kind of play with it and figure it out. But I just make sure that the clamp is right around this spot right here, and you clamp them down and it's no problem, and they work just fine. Now also, when I put the valves on each bed, there's probably somebody's going to ask, what about, so do I run a separate pipe to every bed? No, I don't. Let me show you something. So my pipe comes in here and up into this bed. It continues on that way to another bed. But when I bring it up here and I come out this way, if I have another bed that's in line with this one down there, I don't run a separate pipe all the way to that one. What I do is I continue this one on. So I come down here, and on one side, I don't terminate it. I keep it going all the way out the bed, put an elbow in, go down, come over, come up into this bed, and then I start the process again. So this bed is fed off of this one and that valve. So when I turn that valve on, it waters both of these beds at one time. I hope that makes sense. And then of course, at the end of that bed, then I terminate it with just an elbow. Okay, so let's turn this valve on. I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, that's a little bit too strong. That looks pretty good right there. Now this one is kind of spraying off to the side, kind of going off here. So what you do is you just take and adjust it like this. Now this is one of those pop-up ones. I don't like these as well, but they were out of the Shrub ones, and or the ones that are just flat like this. So I went and got this one just temporarily. See, sometimes it doesn't even want to pop up. There we go. And then, of course, if it's spraying too much, every one of these has a little screw on top, and you can adjust it. This one's spraying off to the side here. So that actually looks pretty good. Everything is getting watered. All the way over into this corner is getting watered. All the way into that corner is as well. Now, the reason why, let me explain to you why I don't like the 360s. Because it sprays in a circular pattern. So if I have, like if I come down here and I put a 360 sprayer in the center of each one, what happens is they will spray, and they do a pretty good job, but they spray like in a circular pattern. So they'll kind of hit like this, and on the corners here, it doesn't get watered. So whatever happens to be right here in this little half, you know, like a 1 foot or so, it doesn't get watered. Like right now, you'll see that that's getting watered right here. And so the whole bed is getting soaked. Also, what I try to do is that I kind of messed up here, but when I do my planting, I try not to put anything right in line. See, this one's in line. This one's actually in the way. I try not to put anything right next to the sprayer. That way it won't stop it. Like, see this here? These two garlics are kind of stopping it. Now it's spraying better out that way. So you want to be careful of that. Other than that, there's not an awful lot to these. It's actually really simple to do. It's time consuming. It takes a little bit of effort. It's not really expensive. I think I bought this 3/4 hose. I think I bought a 100 foot for like 40 or 50 bucks. So it's not really too expensive. And the risers are just, I don't know, they're under $1. And the sprayers, if you get the Shrub ones, they're like, I think they're like $1.79 or something like that. So not very expensive. And then the tees aren't too awfully expensive. They're just, a couple bucks, I think, for everything. So this whole attachment here with the tee, the riser, and the sprayer is only just a few bucks. So I think that pretty much covers everything there is to installing the irrigation in these beds. Now I've come up with, I think, a few things that I think concerns that people are going to have, just from past experience when I've mentioned these things. The first one is going to be the difference between the sprayers and drip irrigation. Now, quite a few years ago, I think it was like 10 years ago, I did a video on installing drip irrigation in the beds that are attached to the grape arbor. And I still have them over there, believe it or not, and I use them. But the thing about those is, for drip irrigation, in my opinion, I think it's more of just a targeted area. For instance, if you're going to be growing like lettuce or spinach or small plants that don't have big root systems and whatnot, the drip irrigation works just fine. But if you're growing things like, for instance, well, what about this? The potatoes here, right? There's a whole bunch of plants, and I don't want to put drip irrigation along each one of those plants. And same thing with the garlic, same thing with the onions over here. That just doesn't work. The strawberries and stuff. You just can't use drip irrigation for that. I know maybe some people have, but I just have not had good luck with that. My thoughts about drip irrigation is that a lot of times you'll drip in the area that you want, but it'll only expand maybe like 6 or 8 inches. And then it'll just go down. But with tomatoes, for instance, if you want to water your tomatoes, sometimes I'll give my tomatoes like 2 gallons of water when it's really hot. And I'll give them like 2 gallons of water, sometimes 3, depending on how big they are. So I could never water a tomato plant that's 8 feet tall with drip irrigation. I know that, okay, your emitters, some of them are like 2 gallons per hour. So you leave it on for a full hour. I don't want to do that. For one reason is because when you leave it on, a lot of that surface water is going to dry off in that hour. So I don't do it that way, because I just don't think that it'll actually expand out 2 feet, so the root systems don't grow as well. When you saturate that whole area and the water goes down, the root systems get bigger, and I think your plants are healthier. So when it comes to drip irrigation, it's great for certain applications, but not for these raised beds here. And another thing I think people are going to be concerned about is disease. That because I'm spraying, that I'm getting the plants wet. Now, I've never had any problems with spraying the way I do here. And I'll give you, I think, a couple reasons why. Number one, I do this in the morning, and so it dries off very quickly. It's hot and dry here where I live. But even then, it doesn't seem to bother them, because I look at it this way. If it rains, the water gets on the leaves when it rains, and nobody really is concerned about that. They like a nice healthy rain, right? But they don't seem to worry about the leaves getting wet when it rains. So I don't think there's any difference with me spraying with these emitters and it raining. There's absolutely no difference in my opinion. So I'm not worried about that. And because I mulch heavily, the water's not hitting the soil, and it's not splashing up onto the leaves, and so there's no disease coming from the soil. So I don't worry about spraying the leaves at all. And of course, my tomatoes, when they start getting bigger, I cut off the bottom leaves, and so mostly what it's hitting is stem anyways. And I've never had to worry about things like garlic and whatnot getting wet. So I don't really worry about the whole disease thing. I don't think it's warranted to consider. I mean, especially since I mulch heavily. And I think the third thing that people are going to wonder about is weeds. A lot of people like to use drip irrigation because they don't spray the whole bed, and then they don't have weeds all over their bed. But because I mulch real heavily, I've never had a problem with weeds. I mean, occasionally I'll get a couple weeds, but for the most part, like I mowed the lawn yesterday, and this is all grass clippings from the lawn. So I've never had any problems with weeds. I mean, I've had some, but they just pull right out, so it's not really a problem. So if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and post them below, and I'll try to get to them. If I was to come in here and hand water this whole garden, it would literally take me 3 hours. I just don't. That's just way too much time to stand with a garden hose in your hand. I did have one person say, well, you know what? I like to hand water my whole garden, because that way I can look at each plant while I'm watering it, and I can see if there's any problems with it. Okay, that's fine. But I can do the same thing. I can turn these on, and I can still go around and inspect all my plants. In fact, it gives me more time to look at my plants and to work with my plants and to trim them or do whatever I need to do, instead of just stand there with a watering hose in my hand all day long. I don't want to do that. So anyways, that's all there is to it. That's how I water my garden beds. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. And don't forget to subscribe. And when you subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you get notifications when I upload new videos. All right?